now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben.
on Spoiled Rotten, and today we have another doubleheader for you. We are going to spoil Hellboy the Crooked Man and Kraven the Hunter. So
That's right.
You're in luck if you thought, oh, I was really hoping that I could get some Hellboy content. Well, we're here. We're here to do that. And I believe this will be our last episode for the year. But yeah, probably. Just count on this being the last one. If not, it'll be a nice surprise to everyone involved.
That's right. It'll be a nice little bonus, but don't set your the hopes high.
Yeah. Okay. Hellboy Crooked Man.
You want to go Hellboy first?
Yeah, we're gonna do Hellboy Crooked Man first. I don't know, man. I really thought it was quite the choice to make Hellboy not the lead of this movie.
Yeah, that was weird to me, and not in a successful way where it's like, ooh, we get to see how scary Hellboy actually is, but in a weird way where it's like, oh, they just don't want to give him too much screen time.
It felt like that. It felt like they were worried, like, because I felt like there was times where like the neck makeup or whatever mask was messing up, and I was like, oh, they seem to be constantly trying to put him in shadows or just lit darkly.
Yep.
I don't know. I think what I love about the first Hellboy, in addition to it being a Guillermo del Toro movie and starring Ron Perlman, is that I didn't know the character and then immediately liked the character because they give you so much of what's inside of him and how he feels about things.
Yeah.
You get to see how he feels about his dad. You get to see how he feels about himself as it relates to being around humans all the time. You get to see what he feels like in terms of love and the prospect of being loved. And you even get to see him be jealous that he's like, yeah, I guess the woman I like is going to go for someone who's not a half demon. I just, like, this movie was just like, he's there for sure. He even has a partner he could bounce off of, but the movie seems to be about like that Tom guy.
Yep.
It's like you're watching him deal with his ex and his current girlfriend and just his redemption story. He's the one that came back to like say sorry to the people in his town. I'm just like, what? I admittedly I tuned out of the movie. It just was not for me.
Yeah, and it's I agree, and it was weird because I tuned out halfway through the movie, and then when I repay attention again, I'm like, oh, this is like a whole other movie because they're done dealing with the first conflict, and now they're just dealing with other stuff, and I'm like, okay, this does feel like two separate stories mashed into one, and that's not successfully, I will add right away. But it was definitely weird how Hellboy didn't get a lot of attention. It was very much operating with the idea of like, yeah, you know who Hellboy is. This is just another story, another episode of his chapter and all that kind of stuff in this setting, which is like 1950s or something like that. And it was just weird. It was weird, but I did appreciate a few things. Okay. Which is the horror element vibe that this and the practical effects. Like when I don't know who the character's name is, but like when they started getting into the skin suit and like started animating again, I'm like, okay, this looks good. This looks really, like really good. Yes.
She comes back. Yeah, like they go upstairs and she's just a skin suit, and then they have to wait for her familiar to come back and go inside. Yeah. Yeah, all stuff where I'm like, this has nothing to do with Hellboy.
Yes.
I was like, oh, okay.
It's like someone in production really cared.
What's his name? Joseph Marcel. I liked him in this role until I was like, wait, did they dub his voice or is that his voice? Because obviously we know him as the British butler from Fresh Prince, but
that's right.
He's got they're all Appalachian in this movie except for Hellboy and his partner. But like, I was just like, is that his voice? Because then when they part of this is the Crooked Man gives whatever Joseph Marcel's character's name is, the he's
The
blind, so that he gives him the opportunity to see, and he gets young
Mhm.
again. And I was like, is it just this guy's voice the whole time, or is Joseph Marcel just really good with accents? Because I couldn't tell. But if it is his accent, I thoroughly enjoyed his performance.
I did enjoy his performance. It was one of those like things where I'm like, he's having so much fun right now, and that makes
Yeah,
me have so much more fun.
but again, he's just dealing with Tom. Like
Yeah,
has nothing really to do with Hellboy. I'm sure he says things to Hellboy, but it's just not really about how he interacts with the titular character.
yeah. There's very like few off cuff quips that he makes about like, oh, Hellboy being a demon, but no, it's all about Tom and
Hmm.
his story and his like. It's just like, all right, let's go help Tom, and then not actually take over for Tom, but let's support him. And it's such a weird decision. It really, really is.
Yeah, it's not for me. I was um I didn't love the 2019 one with David Harbour either, but it was
Sure.
like I felt like that was still like he is integral to the plot. Like they were going with the
Hmm.
whole, oh, we're gonna turn him full demon in this one, which I get that they did in the first one, like the first Ron Perlman one as well. And this was obviously an attempt to be like, we're just gonna do a story with Hellboy in it, but it just was deflating to watch because I was just like, oh, I don't feel like this needs Hellboy in it.
Hmm. It was, and it's very similar to the other movie that we're going to be talking about in a little bit because it's like, does this movie actually live within anything other than its own idea of like, here's the hook, and the hook being like, yeah, it's a Hellboy movie, but in reality, I'm like, Hellboy's not really a big part of this at all,
And you've removed
and
him for all the things that we would like to see Hellboy deal with, like the
yes,
BPRD and stuff. Like all of that stuff is like,
yeah, his posse's gone. What's that about? I hated
yeah,
that.
yeah. I'm not saying you need to recast his dad and Liz and stuff, but it just felt like at least have him work with his team.
Mhm.
They even split him up from his sidekick by his partner by the
Yeah,
end of the movie.
it's
I mean, they're
weird.
back together at the end of the movie. You know what I mean? By the
Yeah,
by when things are get going, they split up. And you're
yeah,
like,
it's
oh,
weird because obviously to me it was a budgetary reason for why they didn't have the other sidekicks and all that kind of stuff. Sure, fine, put all your money into making Hellboy look good. And it should have been written into the script of why he's actually alone. That would have been actually interesting the way they shot it. It's like, okay, let's have a character piece and let's do all this kind of stuff. Let's focus on his psyche, all these little things that could be done through flashbacks. No, they're just like, no, we're not featuring Hellboy in this as much as we should be.
and there's a scene where they are confronted with their demons, like their internal demons, in a house, and
Yeah.
he's like, oh, like my mom's a witch, and I was like, like, is there something at the beginning of this movie that primes me for this line, and just because that's interesting, given the movie is pretty much just witches and the Crooked Man.
Yep.
And that huge ass spider. But I was just like, that. I feel like we don't do anything with that information.
No, it,
Um,
not really. It's just like, cool. I know where I come from. I'm fighting people that are like my mom. That's cool. And I'm like, they don't really address it. You
no,
have the opportunity to actually make it be like him confronting some part of himself
could have been
and
like a
like,
Blade thing of like, oh
yeah,
man, like I'm part of this, but I have to kill it. I
yeah.
don't know. It just was not an interesting movie to me.
No, it
I think you're right
was
that they do some horror stuff well.
mhm.
Um, but I was not. It did not hold my attention. I was not
Yeah.
interested.
Yeah, like the and I think it's Leah, the Tom's wife guy. She Leah McNamara, which is the character name, but played by Effie Kolb. She does some great physical acting, like amazing physical acting there.
Hmm.
But everything else is just like, yeah, I'm checked out of this movie. It's not really, I don't get it. Jack Kesey being cast as Hellboy is like, okay, well, this is just much more broody. Hellboy than anything else. Like the Guillermo del Toros and like the David Harbors were at least attempting to have a little bit of fun, be sarcastic and quippy. This was just like, let's just make him very, very, very emotional and in his feels. Didn't love that. Did not love that at all.
No, I think he is fine if you're like he has to replace David Harbour, but
Mhm.
for whatever reason, I'm just like it's just got to be Ron Perlman. No one
Yep,
else has stepped in the way he has.
I agree.
Um, yeah, I don't have anything else to say about this movie. It just was not for me. If
Yeah.
people liked it, great. I feel like there must be people who love the comics. Like Mike Mignola wrote this one, well, he
Hmm.
co-wrote it.
Hmm.
It's not like The Crow where it was just based on his characters. He actually wrote the script.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping that people who like Hellboy enjoy this movie. I'm not saying that to be dismissive. It just I know that I like a very specific version of Hellboy, which is the Ron Perlman version, which I know people are like, that's not really the comics. So
Right.
if this is closer to the comics and people like that, then I know I'm not really a Hellboy comics fan, and that means that there's a chance people genuinely enjoyed this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope that they did. I really, really hope that they did. I did not, because I'm very much like you. I'm like, oftentimes the first experience I have of a character is usually what sticks in my mind the most.
Mm-hmm.
There are exceptions to that rule. Like if you go back to the um the episode that we just recorded last with Ghost Rider, you'll hear me talk about like, yeah, I did not like Halle Berry's interpretation of Storm. And that's like one of the first Storm characters that stuck out in my mind and all that kind of stuff. So there are exceptions to the rule, but Ron Perlman and Guillermo del Toro do a very, very good job of being like, no, this is the Hellboy I want to see. This is fun. I actually get this. This is
Mm-hmm.
this is good. This is just like, oh no. It feels like a different skin of Batman and not like a well done Batman. It's just like the archetype of broody and like dark and loner. That's not good to me. Don't
No,
like it.
it was not. It's not good. I
No.
didn't. I didn't take to this, but I guess I shouldn't say it was not good. I should just say I did not enjoy it, and
Hmm.
it was not for me.
Yeah.
I do genuinely hope, like, it seems like they're committed to making these movies. Not, I don't think they're making another one with this team,
Right.
but I do think that obviously someone somewhere thinks Hellboy is a viable option,
Sure.
and uh, I will look forward to the next one and see if that one works for me. This one just didn't. Also, funny, we talked about Ghost Rider last episode, and the director of Ghost Rider 2 directed this, and I was just like,
Yeah. That's why I
maybe you
brought it
need your
up.
friend. Maybe you need
Yeah.
your friend. Like, it's just like it was a team. But this was just one half of the team on this,
Hmm.
and I could
Hmm.
see some moments where I'm like, oh, I see the energy, but that's the thing. I'm like, oh, it's the Crank guys, or one of them,
Yeah.
and this has just felt like a complete lack of energy, which is in
Yes.
complete contrast to the rest of their stuff.
Yeah, yeah. The rest of their catalog that they worked on together is like you said, Crank and Spirit Ghost Rider 2. They're higher energy things, inconsistently good, but higher energy things. Like I really enjoyed Crank because of how just ridiculous the
Yeah, the
movie
Crank
is.
stuff is fun.
Yeah,
We already said I need to revisit the second Ghost Rider movie. Maybe
yeah,
I'll feel differently about it now that we've got like so many
yeah.
superhero movies and I can just enjoy. But it didn't really work for me. But it still felt like it had more energy than this.
Yeah. Yeah, this one was just like I don't know if it was and I suspect it was like just a huge severe budgetary restraint that they
What
couldn't
I
do all
mean,
those things.
from the beginning, I was like, this would be great if it was a fan film.
Yes, it feels like a YouTube film more than anything
Yeah,
else. The first that's why I said like this feels like two movies because the first half of that movie it feels like a YouTube film. And then the second half of it is like okay, you clearly knew where you were spending your budget.
mm,
However, it's inconsistent. Like I don't like the fact that there was none of this stuff peppered throughout evenly, and more of it like, no, we're saving a lot of this towards back end shots and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I get why they would do that, but they needed to hook me in the beginning.
that's
They just
fair.
didn't do that.
No, I was not hooked.
To be fair, I mean the spider thing was kind of cool. Um, I enjoyed
I feel
that.
like that was the least interesting thing to me.
I just thought it was like, ooh, okay, there's an action sequence right off
It
the bat.
feels like it
Cool.
should be more interesting to me, but I was like,
Yeah.
So I think you had the right reaction to it. For me, I
Yeah.
was just like, isn't this about a crooked man? Get this fucking spider off the
Yeah. Yeah, because like I will be honest with you, like after the spider thing started like drifting off, I was like, he lost the spider going down the thing. I was like, man, where did they get to the spider? I completely forgot about the crooked man.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Completely forgot.
I I wouldn't blame you.
Yeah.
It's really, really built up the spider, and I was just like, I don't want this.
Because they bookend it with the spider
Yeah,
again
yeah.
after they're done with the crooked man
No,
stuff.
no,
I'm like,
you're right.
what?
It's not like they dropped the spider thread wholeheartedly. It's just they're like, oh right, yeah, crooked man. Okay, back to the spider.
Yeah, yeah, we gotta finish this up somehow. And I'm like, oh God, that's weird. It's so weird. I don't get it. I'm sure it makes sense, and I'm sure it's an actual comic run, but for a movie, it feels weird when you're not getting like a trilogy or something like that. I feel like this is like if they made like a series, fine, this would make a whole lot more sense. Because I'm expecting like 6 to 8 episodes
Yeah.
and there to be other conclusions and other people coming in and all that. This as a movie doesn't work. I think it does need to be, and this is where I thought would be really, really cool, is more Hellboy animated stuff. Because I think like it just beats the budgetary restraint thing. It sets the tone. It can do so many things.
I'll be
I
honest.
really would like that.
I think the reason I don't really read the comics or care for any animated version of it is
Mhm.
because I like the tactileness of seeing Hellboy in live action. I
Oh,
do
okay.
think that is a huge because I as I said, this seems like it could be closer to the comics, and it just didn't work for me. So I don't
Per-
think it's a budget thing. I think I'm just not into when they try to go into what the comics do. I think I
Mm,
just like Hellboy as portrayed by Ron Perlman.
yeah. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with that. I just feel like there is an argument to be made about like, okay, whether or not this was animated and then actually put him into the crazy Hellboy stuff that
Yeah,
requires less human interaction. I fully get you there. But yeah, to me this felt like, okay, this could have been a TV show. Like an hour long, well, one of those hour long episodes within the 90s where it has like this ridiculous season for a 1 hour long show that you never see anymore, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or it's like,
yeah,
here's a 1 hour show with 24 episodes. It's like, wow, that's
yeah.
a lot. This could be
Um,
that.
I just don't think there was any helping this. This did not. This did.
Oh, I completely agree.
This did not inspire anything in me. I was kind of just like, "Is it done yet?"
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not a long
This,
movie.
no, it's not. This was one of those things where I'm like, I am a big fan of B grade movies, and this definitely felt like that. So I'm like, yeah, I'm in, baby. And then it just kind of fell off after the spider thing. And then we
Yeah, I
got
mean, it's certainly
Joseph.
different after that. So yeah, I can
Yeah,
see it falling off for you. Yeah,
yeah. The one thing that re-piqued my interest was like, all right, Joseph Marcel's on screen. What's he gonna do? And I'm like, yeah, he's having so much fun. This is great. This is great to see. He has fun as Jeffrey as well. But like this is a different kind of fun where he's just like, hey, let loose. Just be the scene stealer. This is great.
yeah. No, he definitely steals the scenes he's in because it feels like everyone else is approaching it like it's a B movie, and he's like, "Well, this is the character, so I'm gonna make this real."
That's right. It's great. It's so great.
Um, let's just rate it. I don't have anything else.
Yeah.
I don't want to rush you. Do you have anything else you wanted
No,
to
I don't.
mention?
I barely remember anything else. Yeah, I'll go first. I think this is a 4.5.
Okay, I'm giving it a 4. I
Yeah.
just there's moments, but it's not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's just because I love practical effects in horror movies that this worked on some level,
Mm-hmm. It
but
has its
not
moments.
entirely. Yeah. Yeah. Another
Uh,
movie that has its moments, Kraven the
Conversely,
Hunter.
so everything you said about not everything, but a lot of what you were saying would help Hellboy is what I felt about Kraven. I was legitimately like, this should have been something Sony sold to Amazon to make a show out of because
Yep.
they are checking all the boxes. Like
Mhm.
I'm way more positive on this movie because it actually did something that usually doesn't happen for me, which was make me enjoy the movie it put in my head as opposed to what it was. Like anytime they did something,
Yeah.
like, oh, that's very interesting. Wow, okay, so I guess they could go this way with it. That's not what happened, but it was like I was enjoying being like, oh wow, like good idea, movie, good idea though.
Mhm.
Just imagine if you did it properly. Like, oh, that's another good idea. um, but I basically ended on like, yeah, this should have been in the year that we got Agatha and Penguin. This could have been another just like he's not a bad guy in this. They're not even pretending he's a
No,
bad
he's
guy in this.
definitely
But
not a
what
bad guy.
an idea I liked was they were like the dad's there, so he is definitely
Hmm.
closer to the comics Craven, and then
Yes.
they get to have their cake and eat it too. I'm sure that's a negative for a lot of people, but for me, I was like, hey man, like they're giving you the villain
Hmm.
and like what they really want to do, which is have spin-offs of anti-heroes. And again, I don't think he's an anti-hero. I know people are
No,
like, well, he
he's just
kills people. I'm like, so does Captain America and
yeah.
Iron Man. Like, we just don't. I mean, and Hawkeye, even though they tried to do a show being like he should feel bad. I'm like, what about the other Avengers that kill just like him? Literally, some of the imagery for Captain America is him gunning people down. Like it's he's
Yeah.
not. Yeah. Anyway, he's just a hero in this. This movie, Craven is uh Kraven, the lead character,
Hmm.
comes back to New York to help his brother. No, London. He comes back to London to help his brother, who is the chameleon,
Hmm.
because uh, people have found out that Kraven has a list, and once you're on the list, you're not coming off till you're dead. So the Rhino. This is what I'm saying. They're checking a lot of boxes because they're not doing the bullshit of like, oh, it's just the name. Like, if they say chameleon, you're gonna fucking see the chameleon. If they say a rhino, you're gonna see fucking rhino.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, yeah, the rhino's like, oh, then I'll just kill him. I'll just
Hmm.
trap him and I'll kill him. And then, spoiler alert, it was really his dad the whole time. But
Yeah.
like, what I appreciated about it was like, okay, we've got a bunch of different villains, so you don't really feel cheated on the villain aspect. Like, I
Yeah.
liked the Foreigner. I don't know him really from the comics, but I was like, this guy's cool. And then he has a
Hmm.
fight scene where I'm like, okay, and he can throw hands too. Great.
Yeah.
I liked the Rhino. Like, he was a little off kilter. I liked how like weird he was. Like
Hmm.
that scene where he's just like standing over the sink and goes, "Wah!" I was like, what's this guy up to? I like this. I'll watch more of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you got the dad, who's very obviously the bad guy.
Yeah.
They're not trying to hide it, by the way. I'm not saying it like it's just more like, yeah, he's obviously doing some bullshit here because everyone says he's doing bullshit.
Yeah.
So I was like, I would watch a season where he has to keep leveling up until he finally is like, oh, it's my dad.
Hmm.
That was something where I was like, oh, I would watch this show. I would watch not 24 episodes, but I would watch the same like 8 to 10 episode
Yeah.
run of this show so they could have the time to work on these ideas that they have.
Mhm.
But it's a movie and it's also a Sony movie, so like there's weird ass things like there's two times it work. There's two instances of them doing the same thing, but it works in one and doesn't work in another for me.
Mhm.
One where it doesn't work is where they're like, oh yeah, like if we shoot him with Craven with this dart, he's gonna have his most feared thing happen to him, and then spiders just come out of nowhere. Like, is that was never layered in at all? And they connect it to his mom, who has been layered in, but again, you never heard anything from the mom about spiders until
Mhm.
the spiders show up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's just a thing they did because it's like, remember, he's a Spider-Man villain, so he's afraid of spiders. But then what it did work was like with the chameleon, where he was just like, for no reason whatsoever, I can just do people's voices. I was like,
Mhm.
yep, great, love it. He's the chameleon after all. They did miss a trick by not cutting off his nose. Like,
Yeah.
he gets kidnapped. They take a body part off. I'm like, why wouldn't you take his nose off? Like, it's right there for you guys.
Yeah.
They do show him without his nose later, but I was just like, it seems like it should have been when he got kidnapped that he got his nose cut off.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, like, in all fairness, the fact that they took the finger over the nose makes a lot more sense to
No,
be
I
like,
know, but I'm just
hey,
saying, like, this movie was always gonna be like, just fucking let's do this thing already. Like, it was not trying to build up to anything or be subtle in any way.
To be fair, I wish they blew off the nose through some sort of other kind of thing, like an explosive went off and like nicked his nose off or something like that. And I'm like, okay, great, that would have been fine. But at the end of the day, I'm like, it's inconsequential to me whether or not he's got his nose. He's not like a Red Skull character, but I see what
No,
you're saying.
they show you him without the nose, like in classic form. So
Yeah.
and so it makes sense that he still has his nose when he wants to appear in the world like that. But
Mhm.
I'm like, it just would have been cool if that was again part of a deep thing for him of like, I look this way, this is how I have the power, but I'm
Mhm.
still gonna revert to when I still looked a certain way to
Sure.
be for the vanity of it.
Very true.
Um,
I do like what they did with the chameleon character of being like, okay, so that's because when you're like, oh, that's some reason he can imitate voices, I'm like, yeah, he's tied to like performance and all that kind of stuff, and it kind of makes sense from that standpoint to be like, oh, I'm doing impersonations because I'm like the younger, smaller brother that gets picked on by my dad a lot and all this kind of stuff. So of course he would find like some sort of joy in performance and comedy. I think that made a lot of sense to me. So I was actually quite impressed with that
I
aspect
mean,
of how they
there
wrote
was no,
the
it
chameleon.
was not comedy though. Like when you saw him perform, he was singing very sad songs, very
Correct.
sadly.
Correct. Yeah. It's a tortured soul.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. The performance is coming out of the need to try and calm things down in a volatile household.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, he's definitely not doing anything funny.
No,
This
he's
movie is
right.
not interested in comedy.
Fair enough.
Um, yeah, I again, to be clear, I don't think this movie works, but I legitimately was engaged because it had good ideas along the way. I
Yes.
agree with people that say that Kraven himself is not a real character. He's just kind of there. But
Yep.
at least you're giving me people he cares about around him for me
Mhm.
to be like, well, he cares about that. He cares about that. I don't. I think that, like we said, Chameleon comes off as a more well-rounded character.
Yes.
Like you're very clear on what he wants, um, and what his arc is. Versus, they do this weird thing where they have near the end of the movie they have Kraven constantly be like, no one can beat me. It doesn't matter. And I'm like, well, don't admit that. Like
Yeah.
it was very clear, like, oh, so just he'll never die. Okay, got it. Which is the idea they try to give you with Kraven a lot of the time. But
Sure.
since he's not a villain, it just comes off weird that you're like, well, the hero shouldn't say shit like that. This only
Yeah.
works if he's like a villain that you want to see get taken down.
Yeah. That's the part about these like anti-hero things. It's just like, oh, you only hear pieces of dialogue that clearly identify as a villain or an anti-hero,
Hmm.
but everything that they're doing, no, you're a straight up hero. You're killing people that are drug dealers,
Not
weapon
just
smugglers,
drug,
all that
he's
kind of
killing
stuff.
people who have other people killed violently. Like
Yes.
it's like,
So,
yeah, it's
so
just
it,
like,
like
yeah, you're the movie is even like, I'm gonna work with a lawyer because she'll have all the ins but she can't do anything because her hands are tied, and you're like,
right.
yeah, okay. Sorry, is what about this is anti-hero?
There's nothing about it that's anti-hero, which is why I'm just like everyone at Sony. I'm so glad that this is the last one because I'm like they don't know what a definition of an anti-hero is because he would have been so much more selfish, and he's not any of those things.
Like
He's just
even when he fucks up, I was just like, that
yeah,
was just a plot contrivance. That wasn't like,
yep.
it was like, they're like, how does he leave the house? I guess this is the first time he's ever had to sleep, so now he can't sleep. And you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't like character driven. Like, yes, you can hear his mom, but I'm like, he slept before. Why would I think this would be the time he can't deal with the sounds? Also, some people might say that it's subtle. Uh, I like that they don't really explain what the powers are, but he very clearly can tap into like bird powers and lion
Yep.
powers. It's like it's very clear. It's like, oh, I'm gonna use my bird vision now, or like I'm gonna just use my cheetah speed. I'm gonna use my bear strength or my lion strength, but they don't really have any visual cues for it or anything. It's just like his eyes light up whenever they think it's cool. It doesn't really align with when powers are being used.
It's weird because they has all those other strengths and like abilities that they allude to, but I'm like, but the whole reason why he got those powers is because of a lion attack. that the lion dripped the blood back into his
Yeah,
own
but then they try to
bloodstream.
match him with like a hawk and
Yeah, exactly. I'm like,
and a
wait, where did
cheetah
that
that he
come
like
from?
hangs like he used to hang out with when she was a cub.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like, where did that come from? I'm like, it's not like he gets attacked by animals and he gets their powers. He's just straight up like, no, there was a lion attack and then a well-placed herb of some sort of
Yeah,
like magical powers.
that's the other thing is like the first time it happens, it's
Yeah.
important that it only happens twice because he is very clearly like I don't understand what's going on. But so the first time
Yeah,
he gets killed by the lion and Calypso saves him, it feels like it takes hours. Like
it does.
maybe the same day that his dad comes and goes, he's just gonna come home with me. So I'll give the movie that. But then the second time it happens, she just goes like, "Just get up," and I'm like, "What?
It's like minutes, yeah.
What?" It's just not clear. But also, I know they don't care, so I didn't put too much
Yeah.
into it. I was just like,
I
"Yeah."
was trying to justify it by being like, oh yeah, I guess the second bottle is bigger. I guess he got a bigger dose.
Was it? I thought it was the same bottle. Like I was
It
not even
no,
clear.
it was not. It was not the same bottle. It was a
I
separate
no.
bottle.
She says, "Yeah, I had another one," but like
Yeah,
I will
I
say,
like
I
how they
like what they did with
justify it.
Calypso. I like what they did with Calypso because, in my experience with Calypso, yes, she's very smart. She's a doctor, but she's always seems to be like a damsel in distress. And he's
Mm,
just like, "Oh, I have to do this for Calypso, my love," and it kind of seems one-sided at times.
mhm.
They don't even bother with a love story here, which I was fine with. It's just,
Yeah,
you saved my life. I've been looking for you, and also, just so happens you can help me. And you're
yeah.
like, "Okay, great." She's never like the one time she's in danger, he's like, "Oh yeah, just get on my friend's plane." There's no like, "Oh no, I gotta save Calypso." She saves him with a really corny line of three motherfucker. But like but yeah, I appreciated that she was never a damsel in distress and
Mhm.
there was no real like power imbalance. He was like, "Can you help me?" She's like, "I'll think about it." And then legitimately was like, "Yeah, I'm taking my time to think about it."
Yeah,
And then he
it's
just came to her and was like, "Just please." And she's like, "Yeah, whatever. Let's get into it. I guess they stole your brother."
yeah. She jumps on that train really really fast, considering the fact that she's like, I'm still considering it, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
but I
all
just
right,
like
you
that she's
really
like, "Yeah,
care
fuck
about
it.
your
Okay,
brother.
fine."
Yeah. After I was
Like
like,
she's
all right, you really
annoyed. She's like,
care.
"Let's go, fine. Just tell me what you need." Then he tries to treat her like a therapist, and I like that they were like, "Just drop that.
Yeah,
Just drop it."
yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated that. I did not really. Her accent seemed weird when she was a kid. I was like, "Does this person speak?
None of
Is
the
she American?"
accents made sense. None of them. Because they were just
So
like,
here's the
they're
thing.
in
I could
Russia,
be.
they're in London, they're
This
in
could
like
be a
all over the
Mandela
place.
effect, but was the first trailer him speaking in English with a Russian accent? I know that he
Yes,
speaks Russian, but
there was a
wasn't the
little
first
bit.
trailer where he spoke with a Russian accent in English?
Yes. And then they ditched that because they're just like, oh, I guess they were doing school in New York and like
But it's
Russell
weird because
Crowe is
I'm like,
pulling him back because New York's making him weak.
they made
I'm
a
like,
point of saying he is Russian. It's not like he wasn't born in Russia. They
yeah.
put his stats on the screen multiple times. He
Yeah.
is born in Russia. That's like where they grew up. And I'm not saying you never lose your accent, but it feels like he's far enough along that like he would just still have a Russian accent.
Yes.
But whatever. That's not like I guess that only makes sense to me to give him an American accent if it's an American actor, but he's not one. So like
Yeah.
why did we do that? It just
It-
it felt like a big reveal in the movie too. Like it was like oh, how did it go? And he's like it always. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? What's
yeah.
this? What's he doing now?
It just bothered me that no one in the movie ever really committed to an accent except for Russell Crowe.
Oh yeah, he committed.
He was the only one that was like, "Oh yeah, my character is Russian, so I gotta do this." And
I didn't
everyone
like
else
the.
is like, "No,
I'm sure he
not doing
said it
that."
correctly, but I did not like the pronunciation of Kravenov. I was like, no, just say Kravenov, please.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sure that he said it the right way, and I'm happy for everybody. But it was just like, there's just a certain way I've been saying it for decades. Could you just please?
yeah, yeah. Don't make me start second guessing it like symbiote.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
like they magically started all saying symbiote after that, the Jenny Slate thing.
No,
It's
no, they
weird.
made her change it.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
the reshoots made her switch how she pronounced it.
So weird.
Or maybe not reshoots. Maybe they just did ADR.
Mhm.
There was a weird ADR in this one where they tried to like move Ariana DeBose's mouth for her, and I was just like,
Yeah.
you don't have a shot from behind? Like, what is this? Why are you doing this?
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't know. I think that the director has made really good, thoughtful movies, so
Mhm.
maybe I just gave him a lot of credit of getting in some wins where he could, because again, I don't think this movie works. I just think there's some good ideas here. It feels like there's interesting stuff to
Mhm.
develop. Um, Having said that, I'm perfectly fine that this is the last spin-off they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. So
Yeah.
like that's fine. That's fine. But I was just like, hey man, like of the movies we got this year from this weird thing they've been trying, this was my favorite of them in terms of it just being like a movie where I could be like, look, I see the A to B here. I
Mhm.
get it. And I'm interested by the characters you've populated the movie with.
Yes. It is a competent movie. That's the thing that I'm like, okay, it's it's not airtight. It's not there's good ideas, like you said, like the spider thing, and there's a lot of things here that are like, okay, this does kind of work, but it's so weirdly paced. Like we spent so much time with them de-aged, like
Yeah,
Sergey
I
and
did
like
not like
whatever.
that at all. That was a
That
bad
was
idea.
weird to me. I'm like, why do we need to spend the first entire act with them de-aged? It feels like again, we're not
Well, to
getting
be fair,
enough
it's not
Kraven in
DH. They're
this.
just different actors.
Yes, no, I shouldn't say DH. You're absolutely right about
Yeah.
that. Like in them in child form, and I'm like, why are we spending so much time away from the actual Kraven character? This is
Especially
weird.
since you don't get to see him actually develop any Cravens. So like in real time watching the movie, I was like, okay, so like I just watched him run away from his family. I don't
Yep.
really feel like that's gonna give me insights into why is capable of what he's capable of. And then he does the first thing with the poachers where they get away, and I'm like, see, so he's not even better at the. And then I realize, oh no, he's really good at what he does. But then it
Yeah.
made me like, then why didn't we watch him develop any of this? It's just he is as good as he is when you see him as Aaron Taylor Johnson, and
Yep.
then that's just what you have to deal with. Also, two things at the beginning of the movie where I was just like, I'm sure they wish this came out when it was supposed to come out. The whole like tarot card thing, I'm like, you can't do this
Yeah.
after Agatha All Along. Like that's a rough. Like again, I know this movie was supposed to come out last year, so like, so like Aaron Taylor Johnson said, I've been working on this movie for 2 years because they just keep doing reshoots. So like, I just feel like, oh boy, if you could have it back, I bet you'd be like, no, not after that. And then it's in the same year as Gladiator 2, so everyone's gonna be thinking of Russell Crowe, his
Yep.
hands in the weeds, and then they do not weeds, but the wheat, and then they do that in this movie, and I'm like, this is oh boy, imagine if you could have beat them to the punch.
Yeah.
But it's so because they do it in Gladiator 2 too, so you're like, oh boy, this is unfortunate for you.
Yeah.
And it's the actor from Gladiator 2 as well, so you're just like, oh no.
It's like, hey, remember these characters that you like from these other properties? Well, we're bringing back the greatest hits in this one, baby. And it's weird. It's
Yeah,
so weird.
but I got over that. Like those are two things where I'm like, yikes, that's a rough start. And then,
Mhm.
as I said, I was just like, I like this idea that he's like, no, I'm right. I'm just gonna kill these people. I'm never gonna like falter on that. No one is
Mhm.
truly gonna question me about it either. Like I thought I saw scenes from the trailer where Calypso was giving him more shit about it, but she kind of was just like, oh, okay, you're not like your dad. Fine. It felt like she was kind of like, well, don't be like your dad. And he's like, I'm not. She's like, okay.
Okay, we're good.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, well, you said it. Must be true. But like, I liked that he was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna kill these bad guys, and I'll do it looking like Spider-Man sometimes, so that people will be like,
Oh
what?
yeah, there's a throwback. He
They're
landed
like
like
crawling on
Spider-Man.
walls all the time, or like
Yeah.
getting low to the ground like Spider-Man does. I'm just like, all right. Um,
Yeah.
I
You just
really liked the chameleon payoff. Like, I
yeah.
kind of was hoping that's where it was going, and then when he was like, oh no, like I'm going to be like that. Like, I don't get in my way. I was like, good, good. This is
Yeah.
I would watch season 2 of them going at it.
Yes.
Uh, and then, as I said, the Rhino was an interesting villain. Like, I don't think that's like what he's like in the comics, but I like that they were like, hey, he's gonna be a rhino. They didn't really set up why he had rhino horns, because all they were saying was that his skin is rough like a rhino. But then I'm like, well, he still has full on rhino horns. I feel like that's a there's more of a reason to call yourself Rhino than just you have tough skin. You
Yeah.
can just like, yeah, my condition is I turn into a fucking rhino.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. So the funny thing about the Rhino character too is like, okay, he references New York and where he got his powers and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. I can't remember who the doctor is that he references, whether or not there's a comic
It
backstory
is a
there.
comic character, yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense, but it's the idea
And
of like,
it's and then that's who Chameleon goes to as well at the end.
okay, so yeah, a lot of this makes sense, but it's just one of those things where I don't love what they did with the Rhino because the Rhino, as far as I know, is like a goon and doesn't have like I'm gonna make plans and run shit.
Yeah, but
It's
he
very
still was
much
working. He was still being played by Craven's dad. Like, so he was
yes,
essentially the muscle for Craven's dad's plan. Like, he still
correct.
operates the way he does in the comics.
Yeah, but even
I
in the
don't begrudge them being
beginning,
like he doesn't think he's an idiot.
well, fair, fair. But even in the beginning, where it's like, oh, I have a plan for you and all this kind of stuff, which by the way caught me off guard because I'm just like, oh, right. Like halfway through the movie, I was like, oh, right, that was the guy that met him in the beginning. Like when he says it, I'm like, oh, okay. Because it just, I never even drew that
Oh,
connection.
really?
It
Interesting.
was so funny because I just so checked out by this. I'm like, all right, they're going from one scene to the next. These scenes make sense linked together. This is fine. Okay. I'm like, all right, I guess I did pay attention. Because I'm just so trained at this point in time to be like, it's a Sony Spider-Man movie. It's it's not gonna have that much continuity. So whenever it does have that continuity, I'm like, oh, I guess they kind of were competent there. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they were trying to hide that it was the same guy, but yeah.
Mhm.
I think yeah, I liked the Rhino. Like, I think that was a good deployment of like because he dies in that, so you're never like, oh wow, he's a true menace.
Mhm.
And I think that was a good pivot of like this isn't gonna be a movie where you can really just have a goon. So you
Mhm.
need somebody that doesn't realize they're being played, which
Yes.
is usually a Rhino thing that happens to him.
Mhm.
And he gets played, and it's too painful for him to be popping out like the Rhino all the time. So you're like, yeah, he's got to find other ways to not have to pop out like the Rhino.
Mhm.
It all made sense to me. I thought it was well done.
They did well. Just I will pick on it and be like, I don't like the way he looks. I didn't like when he turned into full rhino form, like he didn't look too much like a rhino.
I
He,
mean, he did. He's gray and he had big horns coming
I
off his face like a
yes, I
rhino. He
it just
looks as
didn't
much like a rhino as the rhino does
I
in the
mean
comics.
I get that. It just I didn't like the design, that's all I'm saying. Like it everything about it made sense. I'm just like, yeah, this didn't work for me. This
That's
didn't
fair.
look good. That's all. That's fine. It didn't need it to be like the most groundbreaking thing, but just didn't work for me in terms of the aesthetic.
Yeah. As I said, I don't know who the foreigner is, but I liked his whole. You look me in the eyes, you're fucked. I
Yeah.
like that stuff. Again, not something they ever really broke down or they it was just like no, you get the idea. He's gonna say 1 2 and then you get what's. I like that they showed you
Mhm.
the full thing the first time, and then like a couple other times they can cut away because you're like, yeah, I get where this is going.
Yeah.
Also the trailer tricked me because the trailer is like I feel like the main trailer has like a set piece or like the centerpiece of it is the elevator thing where you think, oh, that's where Craven comes out and kills all the people from the
Hmm.
elevator. So then when in the movie it was the foreigner and nobody has to die, I was like, oh, this is some good use of marketing. Like you would think, oh
Hmm.
yeah, okay, here this is where we're gonna do this. I'm like, oh, it's him. Interesting. All right, I'm interested to see where this goes now. I didn't know this was coming.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think for me the movie, while not really being a good movie, was like at least I'm interested to see what happens next, and I'm not really just like tuned out like a lot of movies we've been watching recently.
Yeah, yeah, it did have that. There was one part where I'm like, and I should have brought this up when you brought up the whole tarot card thing, but I'm just like, it felt weird to me that I'm like, oh, I know Calypso's supposed to be a voodoo practitioner, so are you trying to like make it so that it's not stereotypically racist in regards to the voodoo stuff and just picking and choosing a lot of like the hocus pocus, witchy kind of vibes, everything, and just putting in a blender and giving it to her? Like it felt a little bit weird that it was Taro, not because of the Agatha all along stuff, but because it's just like this felt misplaced. I don't know how many voodoo practitioners use voodoo in that sense, and that's just a complete ignorance thing on me.
Well, it definitely feels out of place because they just give up on it.
Yes,
Just
except
like,
for the
never
idea of
mind.
like, yeah, I like the fact that he's like, hey, I'm gonna give this back to you as a way of being like, oh, okay, that way she knows he's legit. But at the
Yeah,
end of the day, it was just like it was weird because I'm just thinking to myself the entire time as kids, how are they gonna link back up in the future? And when he
yeah.
does
I
that,
thought she
I'm
was
just like,
flying the
wait, what?
plane because they never really
Yeah.
showed the pilot's face, and so then when I was like, so they just did another thing like the Venom 3 where you never see the face of the general he's talking to. He's like, what is this? What is this play they have? Like what is this isn't interesting to me. Just show the face. I'm
Yeah,
sure
it
the
feels
actor would
weird.
appreciate having their face on screen too.
Yeah, because they've already got a talking line. So it's
Yeah.
not like you're gonna pay them any less for not showing them on screen. Like just show them on screen a little bit. And you'd
Yeah.
expect like, okay, you hid them behind the pilot goggles and all that kind of stuff, but the nature of the relationship should indicate to me that this pilot cares a little bit less about those things and could just wear like a cool pair of aviators or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
I
whatever.
I was surprised at how long Russell Crowe was in this movie. I really thought he was just gonna die at the beginning. And I was like, oh,
Same.
he's just in this movie. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I liked the amount of and I liked that the movie was just like, we're not gonna try and ground this in anything. There's a guy that can count to 3 and kill you by freezing time. There's gonna
Yeah.
also be the chameleon, and
A
the
rhino.
only thing they tried to really explain away was Kraven's powers with using the like root thing. It,
Sure.
but everything else, it felt like even the rhino was like, what? Like he still has the fucking rhino horn, so I don't really believe this whole like it's a skin condition.
Yeah.
I guess he just got that doctor to be like, I guess we're gonna add the horns to complete the set,
Right. Right. And
which I also don't remember the doctor he said.
in all fairness, I feel like the thing could have been like because he said he went to him for strength and
Hmm.
could have been like, oh, splice together genetic material from a rhino, and
Yeah,
then it could have been whatever. But the fact that they're like, it's a skin condition, I'm like, a horn is not really skin, is it?
no, but
It's
that was what I was saying. That's
yeah,
what I just like squared away in my head is that he
yeah.
would have got the doctor to just be like, we're just gonna add the horns because of the whole rhino effect you're going for.
Yeah, it's an aesthetic choice at that point.
Because by the time he's changing into the rhino, no, he doesn't have a skin condition anymore. It's just what he was using to be
Mhm.
powerful.
Yeah.
And I like that they added the whole thing. Like even his sidekick, who was pretty loyal to him, was just like, "Oh, like I don't know, why are you gonna do this to yourself?" And he's like, "Sometimes you just gotta show." I was like, I
Yeah.
like this little thing here too. Like I like that he's like, "This is gonna hurt. Don't do it. Like you don't need to do it."
Yeah, it's like you hired us to be your muscle. Why are you not using
Mhm.
it? I all that was interesting. And I'm just like, oh, this is going nowhere. And the fact that when he dies, like rolling out of the car, I'm like, oh man, they didn't even give him an on-screen like a significant death. We just
Yeah, I
have to
forgot he
really pay
died.
attention.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
I
really
forgot he
would
died.
have to just pay attention to like, oh yeah,
I I guess
the
I thought that was the
assistant is
chameleon rolling out, but yeah, you're right. It was definitely whatever that
Mhm.
guy's name was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh yeah, I thought that he was interesting. He got to do a lot of stuff, and yeah, it's a very straightforward movie in the sense that it's like he's he got trapped by his dad, and other
Yeah.
people got trapped within this trap. And then I like that the brother's response to all of this is, well, the rhino's gone, and so is our dad. So I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take
Yep.
that place.
Yep.
And because the whole movie is like, oh, what if Craven turns into the bad guy? Like, while I feel like both of us could have been like, I mean, I'm pretty sure the brother is gonna turn evil. The only time I was like, oh, maybe they're gonna do something different with him was when he didn't jump at the chance to work with the rhino. I was like,
Yep.
oh, that would make sense if he worked with the rhino. But I
Mhm.
like what he's like, no, I'm not betraying my family. And the movie isn't him, like, especially the way they filmed it when uh the rhino is dying and Chameleon puts up the gun, I was like, oh, is it gonna be like, oh, it was the brother the whole time? But it was just a weird
That's what I
camera angle.
thought.
It was just a weird camera angle that I'm sure they did on purpose, because then he was like, no, I'm trying to kill the rhino. I'm
Yeah.
still, it's still you and me against the world. Like, I
I
liked that he was just like, I really am trying to protect the family here.
yeah, I genuinely thought it was Chameleon being like, shouldn't have abandoned me, bro. It's your turn to pay.
But
Like,
he
I
does have that moment. He's
genuinely
like,
thought,
I forgive you for that. And then I
yeah,
guess his whole thing is like, I'm not going to forgive you for like looking down on me and thinking I can't make my own choices. But I do like that he was like just drunkenly like, no, I know why you're here, and even if it means I don't see you anymore, I forgive you. Don't worry about it. You don't have to come back out here for out of guilt.
Yeah, that was weird. That was weird, but nice at the same time. It's just like, oh, what? Why would you say that?
Because he's drunk. I didn't think that was weird. It was like,
okay,
it's
yeah,
his
that's
birthday.
fair. It's
He
fair. He
sees him
was pretty
once a
drunk.
year, and he feels a way about seeing him only once a year.
True.
And he's like, I don't want you coming here if it's just out of guilt. So just know that I genuinely forgive you for that shit.
That's pretty good. I mean, that's fair. That's fair. All right, that's good.
But yeah, I don't think there's much else in the movie. There's no post credits. I left it right when it ended because I read there wasn't any. There's nothing in the credits, right?
That's my move now. Is whenever I'm watching these like a little bit more questionable movies, going into them is like I will check the Google
After the
report.
credits.
Yeah, whether like once the movie's done, I'll check the Google report to see if there's a post credit. If it says no, I'm not even taking a chance on walking.
Okay.
But if it's like a Marvel level movie, I'm like, I don't trust anything that's being written about this. I'm gonna stay to the end.
Oh, so we both left then.
Yeah, we both left.
Yeah. All right.
I left, and it was just not. It was just like, yeah, this. Because to me, it was one of those things. I'm like, are they going to try to pull a Black Adam move where there's like something significant toward the end, even though like this is questionable whether or not it has a future? I'm pretty sure it did. I'm pretty sure.
I don't think they thought this was going to be the last one until the year played out, and then they were like, oh, I see. I guess people caught on to us not needing to do this bullshit.
Yeah. It was. There's definitely like I like how they made it link back to Spider-Man in some way, shape, or form by showing this fear of the spiders and all that kind of stuff. But
like, if you saw someone dressed the way Spider-Man dressed, would you be like, oh no, I'm afraid of spiders?
No, you wouldn't be. That's the funny thing.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't know that they tied it in properly. I think they were just like, I don't know, spiders.
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, his mom was screaming about it, so it's just like
I was very, again, interested doesn't mean I think it was well executed. I was very interested by the mother, like the way that it was heavily implied that Kraven killed the mom and that she probably wasn't just mentally unwell, and that there was probably some stuff done to her that would put her in a state like that. But I thought it was I did think it was effective every time they like cut to her without, you couldn't see her face, and she was like, I was like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? They didn't go anywhere with it, but I was in the moment always interested by the cuts to her, or even just hearing her voice, and like, because he said, remember, she'd take us here and sing this song, so I just assumed every time you heard the song it was her song that she sang to them. It was all interesting stuff that didn't really go anywhere. As I said, Kraven, the lead, is not, he doesn't question anything and is pretty, like, he's pretty confident he's just gonna win. Like, at one point he said, no one can touch me, and I was like, and I know we already went over this, but it is just this weird thing where you're like, well, there's nowhere for the character to go then.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're done.
Yeah, that's why it feels like to me, I'm like, it says Kraven, but it really is a Chameleon movie more than anything else, because the Chameleon actually has
it's a Kraven
challenge
movie for sure.
It's yeah, that's for sure. The Kraven-offs.
That's what I'm saying. It should have been a show.
Well. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that, because I feel like I was so much more interested in the Chameleons storyline than anything else, and like the fact that we actually got to see the face for what the chameleon looks like afterwards, I'm like, that's great. And I like the little added touch. I'm like, okay, yeah, he can't just grow taller. He's just
It
like,
was again. I don't think they were trying to be hilarious, but I'm sure they understood the comedy of that. I was
yeah,
just
it
like,
was
it was one
funny.
time where I was like, okay, they know what humor is.
Yeah, yeah, it was really, really funny. It felt like to me, I'm like, yeah, this is like the comic accurate Wolverine moment where it's
Yeah,
actually kind of funny. But yeah, it was really, really good to me at that point because it's like, okay, now we have a movie here. You have Kraven, and obviously the brother would make the list, but he can't kill the brother. So like, what's he gonna do? Like that would be kind of cool.
hmm
But they're like, no, we're just doing daddy issues this entire movie. That's it. Daddy issues. I'm
yeah.
like,
No,
great.
I'm glad it didn't go to it was the brother the whole time. It makes the brother more interesting and feels like well, then he really did go on an
Mhm.
arc,
Mhm.
as opposed to just no, he was bad before the movie started, and we're just getting the reveal. I think, and I think that's also why it made sense to me for this to be a TV show if you're not really going to put the hero on any kind of journey because like he still has to go accomplish things and that's sort of like the penguin doesn't you're just learning more and more how much of a shit person he is throughout that show. It's not like
Yeah.
he's ever like as we said he has
He
a
doesn't
moment to like
change.
save his mom and it's like
No.
this is not really gonna work for what I want to do here. So
Yeah, yeah.
no, you're just like, oh, he really is as shitty as everyone says he is, and I
Mhm.
think this was like, oh, he really just is like, I'm the best. There will be no challenge to me,
Yeah.
and the movie is like, yeah, you can drop a building on him, he's fine. Not
Yeah.
even gonna have any scratches. He's just gonna be fine.
Yeah, he's just gonna be over there and you're not expecting him. That's it.
All of that stuff was fun for me to watch. Again, I don't think that means it was a good movie. It's just like I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, then like cool. They already know what they're going for, which is he is just going to win every time, which then made the foreigner aspect interesting to me when I was like, oh shit, he's not winning. Oh shit. And like
Yeah.
I already knew he was gonna get the medicine because that's usually how those comics work anyway. He's just like if anything bad does happen, Calypso's there to be like, don't worry about it. But I
Yeah.
was just like in the moment, oh, this is very interesting that I feel like the foreigner even says like, "Oh, I thought this would be harder." Oh well, I
Yes.
win. Bye.
Yeah. Foreigner literally says that and then boom, like freaking arrow through the face.
Yeah,
And I'm like, okay. I'm
and I
glad
feel
that
like
that
they were.
line
She was even
had
like, "You're not the
payoff.
only one with secrets." I'm like, "Oh, so she could be a hero too. She won't just be there to be his doctor."
Yeah.
So that I mean, again, I would watch more of this. It's kind of what
Yes.
I said when the first Venom came out, which was like, this isn't really work, but I would watch more of this.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's my thoughts on Craven the Hunter. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
Uh, Not really. I think this movie is, like I said, it's a competent movie. There's just nothing glaringly amazing about it. I was going into the movie thinking like maybe the action scenes are going to be really, really good. They were
I
kind
liked
of good.
elements of action scenes. I never liked a action scene. I was
Yes.
just like, oh yeah, like that was a cool wall run you just did.
Yeah. It just like, oh, this really does cement the fact that they're making Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man in it, the way he moves and all that
This
kind of stuff.
one really was like, come on, guys.
Yeah, yeah. It's just
But
like
it also feels intentional because
not
like this
good.
was the closest one to just being a hero.
Yes.
All of them are doing the right things, but there's always like, I guess Madam Web is just a hero. Don't I keep
She's
forgetting
straight up a
she's part of
hero.
this. I keep
Yeah.
forgetting she's part of this. But like the Morbius one, it was like it's still kind of like he could be pulled into being bad, and the first Venom was like there's still a learning curve here on what he can and can't do and could do bad things at
Right.
certain times. This one was just like the movie starts. He's like, "No, I'm a good guy because I kill terrible people,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because
and you're not going to convince me otherwise. Like I just feel like that's right. And also, no one can beat me.
yeah,
I have proved this to myself many times, and I
yeah.
will prove it to you in this movie.
Like it's weird that there's no learning curve in his powers. It's just like
Well,
I
they
got to
don't put
go
it on
back to
screen.
here. They, yeah,
He's
exactly.
he's definitely like I don't understand what's happening, but I guess that doesn't matter. I'll just do what I need to do, which I understand. But
Yeah,
given we have to spend so much time with him as a kid, you're like, well, maybe less about him not learning his powers.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe put more of that in there if we have to do this, because I don't
yeah,
think we have to. I feel like because you're not explaining anything, I already understood the family dynamics ahead of time, and you could have just said, "You only visit me on my birthday."
Yeah.
then everyone gets it.
It didn't need to be that drawn out. It really didn't. It was just super strange. But I will say, toward the end when he does get his full Kraven outfit, I was like, oh, this does look good. It's a shame they didn't use it throughout the whole movie. It's like the Madam Web
Yeah.
effect thing where it's like, oh, she finally got her
But
suit toward
he
the
like
end of the
actually
movie.
does stuff in his suit. No, he doesn't. I guess he just sits down.
He
But
doesn't.
For me, I was just like, I don't really need the line thing. Because they were doing things like, we're just going to full on give you Rhino, we're going to full on give you Chameleon. I was like,
Mhm.
it didn't come off as, oh, the movie's afraid. It came off like, all right,
Mhm.
this is the upgrade if we get another movie, which
Yes.
I'm sure they found weeks before it came out, like, you're not getting another movie.
Yeah, which is weird because it's like you would expect by the end to be like, no, I am Kraven. But no, he's like through the entire movie, I'm Kraven, I'm Kraven, I'm Kraven. And I'm just like, oh,
just
man.
everyone's like, it's the Hunter. I'm like, oh, he just is a thing already. There's
Yeah.
no build up.
It's weird because if you're gonna give him the final outfit, the final costume at the end, it's like, yeah, give us the dialogue option that be like, no, I am this person now. Like the past of me is gone. He's just there already by the beginning of the movie. It's just like, no, I prefer to be called Kraven. Like instead of the Hunter. I'm like, that's just.
I guess
What?
this is him. The only thing I can give the movie is that him putting that on is him accepting that he is more like his dad than he wanted to admit earlier in the movie.
That's
and
fair.
It puts him at odds with the person that he kept saying he was going to protect.
Yeah.
As you said, there's no dialogue to go with that, so it feels less impactful. But I do think the movie, for whatever reason, and then maybe I'm just giving it more credit because of who the director is, that like there are things there that you can take away that aren't explicitly stated. That felt like one of those things, but I also feel like it probably was, and it got cut because a lot of things just feel like they're like, I don't know, man, we got to paper over this part, we got to paper over that.
Yeah, it's fair. It was 127 minutes.
Yeah.
They didn't have enough time to explain all that, which is a shame because they had more than enough time. They really, really did. Act 1 was way too long.
Yeah. We did not need to see that much of them as kids.
No.
All right. Well, let's rate this movie. I'm going to give it a 6.
Yeah, I'm at 6. 5.5. I'm at 5.5. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. This is, as I said earlier, it's probably the last episode of the year, but who knows? I'm pretty sure it is, though. So if you do want to hear more of the show, you can go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. We are on TikTok, Threads, and Instagram at tdfspoiled. We're on YouTube, youtube.com/@tdfspoiled. And you can email us, spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on all the different podcast platforms that you would want to be on. So please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, and enjoy the holidays. We'll be back in the new year. Bye-bye.
That's right. Merry Christmas.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.